Right now at 6, a state trooper shoots and kills a man outside a military facility in Salem.
There's like 2 shots fired. The suspect is down with a knife in his hands.
Plus, the local school board that rejected a resolution that would reaffirm support of migrant students.
It's heartbreaking to see. I would say that definitely more than half of the district is scared right now.
Then, Oregon prepares for a potential tidal wave of federal layoffs.
If there was a large-scale, massive layoff that were to happen, that could impact customer service levels.
And later, how lacing up your shoes and taking a stroll this spring can help a whole lot of happy little trees take root across the state. Good evening. First at 6, we're keeping a close eye tonight on a fatal shooting by an Oregon State trooper outside a military facility in Salem. That individual, who authorities described as a suspicious person, was shot and killed outside the Army Aviation Support Facility on Turner Road at the Salem-Willamette Valley Airport. No one else was injured. Let's get right to John Adams live in Salem with the latest. John?
Well, David, we know it happened at around 10 a.m. this morning, but police aren't releasing many more details at this time. Now, I spoke to employees that work in some of the businesses around the area where this took place. No one wanted to go on camera with me, but what we do know, like you said, one person is dead. No one else was injured. Oregon State Police responded to the Army Aviation Support Facility at the Salem Airport on Thursday morning after receiving a report of a suspicious person in the area. According to OSP, the altercation ended with a trooper shooting the suspect. This video from a bystander shows crews attempting to perform life-saving measures on the individual, but they were pronounced dead on the scene. According to dispatch audio, it appears the individual may have been armed with a weapon.
There's like 2 shots fired. The suspect is down with a knife in his hands.
The Oregon Military Department and Oregon National Guard both confirmed the shooting happened outside the flight facility in Salem. The Oregon National Guard said their security team at the gate first called 911 about the individual and said no members of the National Guard or civilian security were injured. The Salem Police Department is leading the investigation. Turner Road was completely closed down for a few hours Thursday, but is now back open to traffic.
So, John, one concern, this was in the middle of the day in a busy part of town. We know there's a Walmart and a Lowe's, I think, right across the road there. What have you heard from witnesses? Were people aware this was unfolding?
Absolutely, David. Well, I spoke to one individual that worked in one of the businesses nearby here. They told me that this morning when the incident took place, they heard what sounded like a loud car backfire. They were inside, so they couldn't see at the time what exactly had happened. But when they came outside and saw law enforcement officers on scene, they were able to put together the pieces of what took place.
Just glad nobody else was injured here. John Adams in Salem tonight. Thank you, John. In your headlines, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office says the person who died in last night's crash on Marine Drive in Fairview was a 17-year-old boy. Authorities say he was driving a pickup around 6 last night when it crossed the center line and then crashed head-on into a FedEx truck. The pickup rolled over, trapping the teenager, who did not survive. His passenger, it turns out, another 17-year-old boy, was taken to the hospital along with the driver of the FedEx truck. Investigators do not believe drugs or alcohol were a factor. The Clackamas County Sheriff is trying to identify this man who allegedly took photos of a woman in a store dressing room. Deputies say the incident was January 30th at a store at Southeast 82nd and Sunnyside. The victim says she was changing when she noticed a camera lens looking up at her from a hole in a bag on the floor. She confronted the man in the neighboring stall and took these photos as he was getting away. If you recognize him, call the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson is proposing spending cuts across state services as lawmakers tackle a $15 billion budget shortfall. Today, the governor floated about $4 billion in cuts. They include eliminating some state jobs, forcing state employees to take regular unpaid days off, delaying the start of any new state programs, and even cutting food bank funding after federal COVID-era assistance dried up.
That just seemed to me, given a budget shortfall, would I want to do that? There wasn't a budget shortfall. Of course I wouldn't do that. Right? But look, we're not going to tax our way out of this thing. Not going to happen. $15 billion is a lot of money.
All right. The governor says he is not willing to make any cuts, though, in education or public safety. A Beaverton tech company says it'll be laying off 90 employees, about 40% of its workforce, a day after reporting some significant losses. Digimarc has been around since 1995. It specializes in barcode and authentication technology. This is footage actually from a 2020 KGW story about their invisible barcode. It was a product that aimed to simplify recycling. The company has operated at a loss for more than a decade, including a $39 million loss last year. Digimarc shares plunged 43% on the news. Layoffs will come at the end of March as the company restructures. And we're learning more tonight about the restart of Oregon's motor voter program. You may remember around 1,600 people were automatically registered to vote without providing proof of U.S. citizenship due to a tricky driver's license web form. However, Secretary of State Tobias Reed's office says many of those were in fact U.S. citizens who just didn't have their documents at the time, and many of them have now provided proof of citizenship. On top of that, of the 17 cases where people who were improperly registered went on to vote, 8 were cleared up and are closed, 6 are under investigation, and 3 have been referred to the Oregon DOJ. The governor's office says its audit is ongoing. Matt?
All right, David, thanks very much. It's fun to look at the numbers today in weather because they were pretty impressive and really delightful by most people's standards. Well, the sun's gone down now, but we're still in the 60s. We usually top out in the low to mid 50s this time of the year, so that is warm. And in fact, we had a record high temperature today. We hit 70 degrees. I know it says forecast, but for this one, this was the actual high for the date. It's one of the warmest temperatures we've ever had in the month of February. The old record was 67 back in 1968. What about tomorrow? Well, tomorrow's record is tough to attain because it's the all-time warmest February temperature Portland's ever had. Back in 1988, we hit 71. But we're going to be close. We're going to get up to about 69 degrees tomorrow. And while we won't be near the record on Saturday, we'll still be in the 60s as the nice weather continues for about 2 more days around town. And these numbers will be updated by 10 o'clock tonight once the computer kicks on through. So 60s and 70s on the west side. Medford and Roseburg also jumping into the 70-degree club today. We've got 2 more warm days on the way. Showers will show up as we go into Sunday. And we have to talk about the parade of planets. We'll do that a little bit later on. David?
It's all looking up right now. Thank you, Matt. Okay, on Capitol Hill, former Oregon Congresswoman Lori Chavez-DeRemer, President Trump's pick for Labor Secretary, has now cleared a key Senate committee vote. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who was skeptical of Chavez-DeRemer's past support of pro-union legislation, was the lone Republican no vote. 3 Democrats actually crossed party lines to support her nomination. Chavez-DeRemer's nomination now heads to the full Senate. We'll keep you posted there. Meanwhile, an Oregon school district says it is the first K-12 district in the country to join a lawsuit challenging the Trump administration directives targeting diversity programs in education. The Eugene 4J District Board voted unanimously to join that suit filed Tuesday in federal court in Maryland. It is seeking to block the president from following through on a threat to withhold federal funding for schools that don't end all diversity and equity initiatives and follow new instructional guidance by a March 1st deadline. District leaders say compliance would hinder teachers' ability to teach accurately about all aspects of American history. Well, to Woodburn now, where the school board rejected a resolution that would have reaffirmed support for immigrant students. Celine Stevens is live in Woodburn. Celine, we have seen many school boards here do the exact opposite. So I suppose the question is, what happened?
David, well, there were a few things. So 3 out of 5 of the school board members voted no, citing issues related to the verbiage of the resolution and concerns about funding and the resolution potentially making them a target amid the latest moves by the Trump administration. So the vote happened on Tuesday night on a resolution aimed at reaffirming Oregon's sanctuary laws, where no public resources, including school employees, can be used to help with federal immigration enforcement actions. However, some members voted no, and they wanted more time to review it. The superintendent of Woodburn School District had already announced they would ensure safe and welcoming schools and wrote in a statement that the board's vote does not impact the district's commitment to keeping a safe school environment, and they will continue to follow sanctuary laws. But Woodburn School District educators told me today that despite nothing changing, it was about showing solidarity.
The district office and the superintendent have been proactive, and they have sent out messages about being safe in schools. The only thing we were expecting to do is have the board, repeat what had already gone out, and that they wouldn't do that is rather surprising. It seems that in this political climate on a national level, the idea of multiculturalism and multilingualism is under attack.
The district says the board will hear the resolution again on March 11th. And now remember, other school districts have approved resolutions like this, including Portland Public Schools and Salem Kaiser Public Schools. David?
Yeah, Celine Stevens in Woodburn tonight. Thank you, Celine. New this evening, a federal judge in San Francisco has ordered the Trump administration to rescind a memo that's led to the mass firing of thousands of federal workers. In his decision, the judge found the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, had no authority in the firing of probationary employees. Lawyers for the government says the OPM did not direct the firings, but instead asked agencies to review and determine whether employees on probation were fit for continued employment. Okay, a bit of a distinction there, but the judge disagreed. However, the ruling does not reinstate workers who've been dismissed. The judge has ordered a new hearing with the head of the OPM. I want to bring in Tim Gordon now. Tim, things really changing day to day, even hour to hour. What is Oregon doing right now amidst all this uncertainty?
Yeah, well, David, so far the Oregon Employment Department does not have a count of the number of federal workers who've applied for unemployment benefits so far, but they are certainly tracking all this and preparing. We told you earlier this week that Washington has seen at least 720 claims from federal employees since the start of the year. They have about 78,000 in the state. In Oregon, there are more than 29,000 people here who work for the federal government. That includes 7,000 in the Postal Service, 6,400 in the Veterans Administration, and 3,400 in the U.S. Forest Service. Department leaders say they are ready to help no matter how Oregonians lose their jobs.
We're here not only with unemployment insurance, but we also have the WorkSource Oregon centers that are across the state that can help people find a new job, do some retraining, like resume building and all sorts of things like that.
It is possible to see the effects of changes at the federal government level occurring in other sectors of Oregon's economy as well. And so we are doing our best to keep an eye on what's publicly announced as we get jobs reports in.
What they're referring to there, the Oregon Employment Department will also be looking for other workers affected by funding cuts and groups that rely on federal dollars, like researchers at universities and other organizations. But specifically for federal workers, there is a page on the Oregon Employment Department website meant to help them go through the process if they lose their jobs. David.
Super complicated, a lot of ruling and a lot of uncertainty. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the update there.